I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange. Hey there, spooky nerds, and welcome back to Talking Strange, the paranormal pop culture show. Question for you. Have you heard about the new horror film, Rosario? It opens in theaters May 2nd, stars Emeraude Toubia and friend of our show, David Dastmalchian, and it is the feature film directorial debut of Felipe Vargas. It's produced by Mucho Mas Media, which is an independent Latino film studio. And in the film, Emeraude plays Wall Street stockbroker Rosario Fuentes, who returns to her grandmother's apartment after her sudden death. While sorting through her grandmother's belongings, Rosario uncovers a horrifying secret, a hidden chamber filled with occult artifacts tied to dark generational rituals. As supernatural occurrences plague her, Rosario must confront her family's buried secrets and face the truth about the sacrifices and choices they made. So the film, I saw it before it opened as part of a screening press day kind of thing. The film is, I thought, notable for putting a spotlight on some pretty nasty demons from the Palo belief system, which is a somewhat secretive religion that combines elements from Catholicism and Spiritism, not entirely unlike voodoo. But it's also really a story about the immigrant story, about family, parents trying to make a better world or better life for their kids, about family drama, about grief. But really, it's a monster story, a horror movie, lots of blood, goo, practical monster effects, and shades of Evil Dead and a little bit of Drag Me to Hell, which I think is a great comparison. And Emeraude Toubia and Felipe Vargas joined me to talk about the film, about the monsters, about what scares them, and about the making of Rosario. So let's get to it and hear from Emeraude Toubia and Felipe Vargas of Rosario, which again opens in theaters May 2nd. To begin with, I'm going to direct this to Emeraude because I've read that you're not necessarily a big fan of horror, which is okay, no judgment.
Not that I'm not a fan. Well, I guess, but I'm a baby. I'm a scaredy cat, and I just have a hard time watching scary films. They just really get to me, and I can't sleep at night. Even when I don't watch scary films, I turn off the light and I run to my bed like if someone's chasing me. So I don't know what it is, but I really did enjoy filming Rosario.
Well, with that said, I mean, we all have that moment as a child, as an adult, that thing that scared us. It stuck in it became kind of part of our horror DNA, even if we're not a horror fan outright. So is there a movie as a child or as a teenager, an adult, that really freaked you out to the point where you're just like, I can't. I know that this is not my thing.
Yeah, it was, I don't remember the name of the movie, but it was about dolls, that dolls would come to life and would like come and kill you. So there was a time where I had all these beautiful dolls in my room and I had to get them removed. But then it's like living in a Latino household, they have to up their, like their scariness, their scary level towards you. So then it was La Llorona, then it was El Cucuy that was gonna come grab you at night. Like you just couldn't get away from all these people that your mom and your family tried to, like make sure you weren't doing anything you're not supposed to, try to scare you all the time.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was raised Catholic, so there was a lot that was being directed at me that I should be scared of. But weirdly, I think I went the other direction and then started being more attracted to it. So
Yeah.
now, and Felipe, I mean, I know with you, it's a little bit of a different setup. I mean, you're very much a horror nerd.
Absolutely, man. I love it. And similar to Emeraude, I grew up on those stories of La Llorona in the forest. The louder her cries are, the further she is. If you just hear a whimper, she's right behind your tent or your ear. So those sort of stories really shaped me, those myths, those legends, those folk tales. I loved them. And I embraced them like you. I was fascinated by the bizarre and the monsters. I would build little sculptures of them. I would draw them. I would eventually, with my parents' camcorder, recreate them with my cousins. We would flip a coin to see who gets killed in the next short film. When I was 10 or 11 or 12, I would tie prosthetics to my dog. That was the movie monster. So I loved it, and it also led to just a deeper kind of deep dive into horror films, and a lot of the classics inspired this one. So I've been a fan for a while.
All creators and maybe even students that want to impress their teachers. There's something about that affirmation, that moment where like either if you're a comedian making someone who is that you look up to, making them laugh, or someone being pleased with you, or even freaking out your friends. So Felipe, was there a moment that you could think of either as a young creator or a little bit more established director and filmmaker where you're like, all right, I got them. I got a jump scare out of that person, or got some sort of comment from a person that I respect the hell out of that I freaked them out or grossed them out or whatever it might be. Is there a moment like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many little moments. I think a big part of it for me is I enjoy the process too, but that reward, I mean, that's hard to beat, when folks are jumping out of their seats. And I think even in the earlier short films, I remember one time I invited all my aunties, and my grandma inspires this movie a little bit. And I told them, okay, it's my first comedy. You guys are going to love this. Starts as a comedy. Halfway through, three of the characters are murdered, and it just leads to this bloodbath, and seeing them like jump out of their seats and scream, that was like, wow, this is fantastic. And then a little further on, I did a short film called Milk Teeth. It's a horror short film. Folks can check it out on YouTube. And seeing that with an audience of 400 people, and the reactions, the visceral reactions to the body horror, but also even like the tears to some of those moments, folks having to leave their seats. It was like, man, you kind of have them in the palm of your hand for that moment. It's something special for sure.
Just as a quick follow-up, talk a little bit about how your grandmother inspired or was reflected in Rosario.
So my grandmother did not put a curse on me, did not try to unleash demons on me. But I think something everybody can relate to is that you don't fully know your parents and grandparents until you really seek it out and try to understand them and see them as adults and see them as folks who were, doing the best with what they had and doing the best that they could for you. So that to me is the core of Rosario. It's discovering and rediscovering grandma's secrets and stories and heritage. Every time I talk to my grandmother, I learn something new. It just, one thing after the other. And it's that to me is hopefully a big part of what makes this film special.
And Emeraude, you have this. I don't want to put. It's very uncomfortable to put somebody like in this role of being a symbol or a poster child or whatever. However, you can't help but comment on the fact that there's just not a lot of Latina women leading American horror, and so it is noteworthy for that purpose to see you, not just in the lead, but really in pretty much every shot, other than a handful of it. You're out there a lot. So talk a little bit about any reflections that you've had about kind of stepping forward as a Latina lead in American horror, and also just the heavy lifting of being in front of the camera for such a lion's share of this project.
It's a really great moment for me. I'm not only leading the film, but it's also Latino creatives that are Felipe Vargas, the director, and the production, mucho más, it's a group of great and very talented Latinos that are, bringing this out. And it's my first theatrical release. It's my first movie where, I'm going to be in a cinema. And I was just talking to my friends, and they're going to have a screening in Brownsville in the same theater that I used to go to watch movies. And now, they're all going to be there watching, my face on the big screen. So it just feels like a very full circle moment for me, and how, I think my younger self would be so proud of me and of all the dreams that she has. But I feel like there's still a long way to go. I hope this film just creates more opportunity to everyone for everyone, not only for me, but it opens a lot of doors for a lot of people. And so they can just give us the opportunity to show how great and talented we are. And, sometimes we have to work 10 times harder to get where we are, but that's what we're here to do, to pave the way. And now, speaking about the heavy lifting on set, I mean, I was previously on a show where it was a lot of demon fighting, and I had to do that in heels. Unfortunately, Rosario does not have a whip, or fortunately, but we were shooting in Bogota, Colombia, in South America, and the altitude was pretty high, and just by walking, you're kind of out of breath. So what I did before heading over there, I lifted a lot of weights, heavier than I normally do, just to kind of keep feel the strength and the energy to keep going on these long days. Because like you said, it's just me. I was the first one in, the last one on set, and but it was very, very gratifying, especially because there was such a great energy on set. It just felt very collaborative and very safe, a safe space to really just try and put your emotions out there and be vulnerable and try different things and put your heart out.
And horror is a great genre I've found as far as looking for new monsters, meaning cultural expansion as far as what scares us, especially in recent years. We've seen a lot of that. And I was curious, Felipe, if you could talk a little bit about the Palo religion and your interest in it, what maybe you knew about it before helming the film, and also why you found it to be such an interesting belief system to kind of explore through the lens of horror. Because let's face it, most demon-focused horror is really heavily Catholic or Christian, and then meanwhile, Palo is sort of this combination of a lot of different faiths that are coming together.
Absolutely. And I also just wanted to reiterate what Emeraude was saying. She killed it in this role. She really led this film and this deep dive into that Palo realm. It's all through her eyes. But in terms of Palo, I mean, first of all, I was very familiar with just these sort of traditions and the occult. Two of my aunts are mediums. I grew up around these stories. And when I received Alan Treza's script, I deep dived into Palo, which is essentially, it's a real religion. All of this is real, it exists, and we consulted with real paleros. It's a blend of African traditions, Catholicism, and more traditional Latino rituals. All of that coalesces to create Palo. So we did a deep dive. We went to the botanicas in New York and Colombia. We spoke with the paleros. We did all the reading. And we just learned, I think, why it was such a perfect fit for this movie about Rosario's sacrifices is that the entire religion is built around sacrifice. You have to give something to get something. Everything comes at a cost. So that was really, the core of this. And also the textures, like as you said, how many horror films have we had about Catholicism since The Exorcist? And The Exorcist was its peak. So to create a new visual language with new textures and traditions, with the iron and gangas and the cigars and the rum and the candles, all of that is hopefully unique to this film and really built out the world. But the last thing I'll throw in on Palo is that there's a beautiful side to it too. And really the story is her discovering her grandmother's religion and roots and how she used it to communicate with the spirits of her past and to be in touch with who she is. That's really what Palo is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to say, I mean, I live in New York City and the film's set in New York City, and the way Palo is represented is I found very interesting. Actually, the only thing that maybe took me out of the movie just for a moment was how big that apartment was. I'm like a whole other wing to this entire apartment back here.
Rent controlled. She's had it for a while. Maybe it was rent controlled. Maybe
I'll take the demons. I'll take the demons if it means that much extra space. Emeraude, were you familiar at all with the Palo religion or the faith? Or did you, once you took on the role, you really had to dig into it and maybe discover
very, very vaguely. No, I didn't want to look into it because as my character, I was finding it out. So I just thought would be a lot more natural for me to just as an actress to be finding out as the character was finding out. No, I mean, I've heard of many, many different religions. I grew up in a border town, Texas, and a lot of the, cartels do use a lot of different kinds of, we would say, I guess, in a way, like dark magic,
Yeah.
and they sacrifice a lot of things in order to. So you do hear a lot on the news, and how prominent it is in that kind of area. But other than that, I've never really that I know of, right, been around it or know anyone, but definitely something that I vaguely knew about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate because some of the bad elements focus on the negative side of it, and then that's
Yeah,
sort of what ends up defining the cultural awareness
correct.
of the religion. But what you the film, it's a enjoyable, fast-paced, it's a horror movie straight out, and yet it also tackles themes of grief and guilt and family trauma and that inherited family trauma. And you within this role, I'm curious, how did you approach that with your performance, but
Mhm.
also without taking your performance into a place where it moves from fun horror into overwrought? That's a balancing act.
Well, I digged into like some of my personal insecurities, right? How sometimes we try to fit in, we try to be somebody else to fit in, just to get that validation. And sometimes we don't realize that that doesn't make us stronger. What makes us stronger is, feeling comfortable and confident with who you are, and your quirkiness, or where you come from, or what your family has sacrificed. I feel that just makes you even stronger at what kind of makes your wings spread and fly as high as you can. So I felt like that's part of some of my personal insecurities that I felt helped with
Mhm.
what the facade that Rosario always had of not accepting where she comes from, and then kind of then embracing all of it at the end. And I feel that just makes us more powerful.
Do you want to add to that, Felipe? Because I think, within your direction, this is a fun horror movie, but also as I said, there are these kind of heavier themes that are present as well, and figuring out that balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fun thing about horror is there's always been these sort of tonal shift, and our
Hmm.
writer Alan Treza baked that into the script. He's a horror comedy writer first and foremost, with Some of the Darkness, Burning Our Ex, and all of that tonal shift that was in there. And I think horror and comedy are so close together, the surprise and the misdirect and the shock. So I think weaving that in, but then on top of that, weaving the deeper layer of, horror as a reflection of society today, horror as a reflection of the fear of, you know, of your roots or your ancestry or assimilation. All of that, I think, can live in the same movie and can just add layers. It's like kind of a Russian doll. You can kind of take it apart.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't want to be too spoilery here, but there is a scene where we are seeing the immigrant's journey, and I would say that there's a lot about this film that's sadly even more timely right now. Um, that scene, talk about constructing that, because in some ways that's like the darkest scene of the film. To kind of take that question for what it's worth. I mean, approaching that one, was it challenging? Did you feel like you wanted this scene to kind of pop in a different way, etc.?
It was very harrowing and it was very powerful, and it was an amazing experience to speak with folks who had crossed the border and what their experience was like. But I think anyone can connect to this idea of, leaving behind something to pursue your dreams. The cost of pursuing a new life. And I feel that personally. My parents came from Colombia. They left their family and their friends and their career to give me a shot to be where I am today, me and my brother. So that burden of that sacrifice, that's what the true horror of this film is. And like horror is always a mirror, it's a reflection. And I think that was what I think gave this film a little bit more depth and a meaning. Hmm.
Hmm. And Emeraude, as you're approaching this role, obviously there's been a lot of great women in the lead roles of horror, And then there's also, like this classic Scream Queens, which have also been excellent. As you were kind of shaping your portrayal of Rosario in this, what were some things that you wanted to borrow from or be inspired from a performance over here, or something that you wanted to lean in more over here? Any kind of things that you're pulling from that toolkit as you're building this character.
I
Also, I'll
think
say she's also very funny at times and very believable in that mode, doing things that I think a lot of us would be doing as far as talking to ourselves out loud, or those like "you got to be kidding me" quotes. But yeah.
yeah. One thing I was really scared of was screaming. I'm like, how do I scream and
Mhm.
not sound, I wanted to sound really horrifying. I want people to hear my scream and like, feel terrified. I wanted just to be her to be grounded, like more than anything. That's like the word that I was like, okay, want her to be real. I want her to be gritty. I just want her to feel like her raw emotions. Sometimes it's hard to draw from, I mean, incredible women, but when you don't necessarily relate to the background of their journey, right? I feel like this is a very specific journey that I kind of had to go just more like on a personal level with friends and family and like what they've been through and what I've been through, and that's kind of what I pulled on to kind of get into character of Rosario.
hmm There's that was a more serious question, and now this is a little more silly. But there's a lot of goo and worms and a lot of gross out elements in it, which
My
is
favorite
great.
co-star, the Worms, are my
Yeah,
favorite co-star.
it's, they're like the worms agent is killing it because there's a lot of work that they get a lot out of this. There's and I love talking about. I love the nuts and bolts, how the sausage is made, kind of thing. I'm curious from the performance side. What were some of your least favorite moments of the goo, the worms, the long work
Okay,
day where you're just like, this is my life.
definitely least favorite was the Worms. I was so scared of them. I really want to give a shout out to my stand-in that she pulled, the worm out of her ear. She was handling it, with her hands, and I couldn't. I don't know why. I just felt extremely disgusted by these little things that, are slimy and move pretty fast. To me, it was surprising that these worms had a handler that would take care of them. And, they had a couple of shots and then they would replace by a different worm. And, they were very well taken care of. There's a part where some goo is spilled on my face, and
A
we
lot of
waited.
goo.
Yeah, we waited to the last shot of the day, and Felipe was like, "Are you cool with this?" I'm like, "Yes, please, like throw it all on me." And it was just so interesting to see, and it was easily removed as soon as I showered. But yeah, it was very interesting to be working with so many elements. I loved like all the blood and the scars. All of that was like really fun to have on.
The thing about movies is that sometimes it teaches you a new thing about yourself that makes you uncomfortable or cringe. And there's a moment with the worm in the ear that made me cringy. And I really thought eyes were my thing, the thing that, that made me uncomfortable, like people touching eyes and whatnot. What is there anything that is your level of discomfort where you're just like, that's the bridge too far for me. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to think about it, etc.
Yeah, when I see like someone like a cut, there was the cheese grater.
Oh yeah.
I just saw a movie where like the girl like pulled it like on her. Oh, like I felt that hurt me so much.
Yeah. And that's a great segue because I was Evil Dead Rise, and
Yes. Also, like the Saw movies, those were so hard for me to watch. Like I like the supernatural stuff sometimes is a little easier for me to watch, but when I'm actually seeing a human like cut, themselves and put their hand in like boiling water, whatever it is, it's an acid or that to me, I'm like, okay, I can't. Final Destination, those are the ones that really, really get to me.
yeah,
The
please.
visceral reaction. There's such a visceral reaction to that body
Yeah.
horror that I love it. Especially in this film, we have a scene where there's the bloodletting scene, and there's a lot of slicing and cutting, and it always gets the best reaction. I think it's that stuff is just like ingrained in us, in our soul to not
Yeah.
hurt your body or someone else's body. I think that stuff is really reaches deep.
Well, I think it's fair to say, Felipe, that you are a fan of Sam Raimi of Evil Dead, of Drag Me to Hell. Uh, I think there's some love letter moments in this film. So I was curious about anything that you kind of viewed as your personal geek out moment, Easter egg, Valentine to some of these other films that you grew up loving. And then, sort of in addition to that, I'm very curious about the spell book that we see and how detailed we got with the spell book outside of what we see on camera. Like how in depth you got with this grimoire.
That's a great question on the spell book. I'll answer the first one. Sam Raimi, huge inspiration. I had the whole crew watch Evil Dead Rise and as well as Fede Alvarez one, and Evil Dead 2 is a big one for me. And the original, of course.
Yeah.
So every Sam Raimi movie, Drag Me to Hell too, I think is a big influence for this movie. A little bit of Del Toro in the production design and the sort of lush romantic horror. A little bit further back, Giallo movies, the DP and I looked a ton at like Mario Bava, Argento, The Color, that inspired us to do that scene where she closes the red curtain and the whole room is doused in this like neon red, and the lights passing of the train. There's just a lot of like different color sequences and camera moves that were inspired by like some of the 70s classic. There's a lot of zooms, a lot of dollies, a lot of kind of slow rotations, Dutch angles. So I think those were some of the big inspirations. There's a Japanese film called House that is just like balls to the wall, like the best haunted house movie ever. I love that one. And it also blends some of the like absurd comedy, dark comedy as well. And finally, I'll say like some classic Mexican movies for the rituals, like the original La Llorona and El Vampiro, Santa Sangre is a Jodorowsky movie that is really crazy. I could talk about this for hours, so I'll stop there. But I think those are some of the big inspos for this movie.
Okay. And the spell book?
The spell book was hundreds of pages. Like not even kidding. It was the full book to a T, detailed. What's interesting is that Palo, the religion, doesn't actually have written text. All these prayers are passed on by word. So the idea was that grandma composited and put this thing together. It's our Evil Dead's, what's that, the book called The Necromancer?
Necronomicon.
No, Necronomica, exactly. So it's our version of that, but instilled with the texture and the roots. So grandma would even paste bugs and leaves and all the little elements that she would use for these spells. It's all in that book. And I think the producer ran away with it. He has it in his office.
Get him to post some.
I kept the disturbing Kobayende doll made of nails. So that was in my library for a while, but then I moved it to the closet because it gave a little bit of a dark energy.
Oh, well, you'll need to post pictures of that. Before I let you guys go, I'm curious about either your personal boogeyman growing up, creepy old house at the end of the block, whatever it might be, or maybe some other lore that you would like to explore in a future project that you kind of want to turn the world onto and explore the depths of darkness through. Would you like to go, Emeraude?
They would tell me about the lady of the hill. In Spanish, we say la vieja del tacón. So it was if you were just to hear one heel, like tuck, and not the other one, it was kind of like a version of La Llorona. But it meant that she was coming to get the kids. She was coming to get you. She was coming to haunt you. She was coming to take you away because you were not behaving. So that's something that I remember, like when I was going to sleep, it was like, oh my God, like I would make sure that this woman wouldn't, I wasn't hearing the heel because she would come get me. It's never been done before. Maybe I should, produce this movie. Let's do it
I think
together, Felipe. La vieja del tacón.
let's make it happen. I love it already. And I think half of these stories are like parenting tactics to get kids to do.
Absolutely.
Behave, yeah.
And then, the craziest thing is that I tell my mom, Mom, do you remember you? And she's like, what? You probably dreamt about it. I don't remember that. And, it's like, well, mom, like you tortured me. And, I still feel her haunting me. And now you're telling me you don't remember.
It's
Yeah.
almost scarier.
Felipe, you take this then. Personal, lore from your upbringing, but also something you'd like to share in a future film.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm shooting a movie later this year based on Pata Sola, which is a very Colombian one. That means the one-legged woman. And actually very similar to the one Emma was talking about. You'll hear a single footstep because her leg was taken. She lost her leg in a mining accident. And she roams the jungle, this sort of one-legged beast. And when you hear those offbeat footsteps, she's coming. So, but it's funny because a lot of the myths and the lores, they're all kind of interconnected in this.
Yeah. It's like the Virgin Mary and La Virgen de Guadalupe. It's like everything is catered to just what suits the culture better.
Exactly.
Well,
That's my long-term goal, the cinematic universe of these legends and folk tales, and we'll weave them all together. So
I look forward to seeing more. Well, and thank you so much. Thanks for your time. And really enjoyed Rosario and look forward to seeing more from both of you, Emeraude and Felipe. Thank you so much for you guys. And
Thank you, Aaron. Have a good
stay
one.
spooky. Yeah.
Bye.
And that was Felipe Vargas and Emeraude Toubia with the new film Rosario, which opens May 2nd. Do check it out. I thought it was a fun and at times even funny horror movie because of, again, the comparisons, I would say, to Evil Dead. And it does switch up expectations by telling a different kind of cultural horror story, which I love. Introducing some new monster lore into the genre. And I've said it many times before that I'm always excited to see new types of creatures, monsters, and everything out there instead of just sort of the cookie cutter kinds of demons and ghosts that we've seen for so long. So seeing something a little bit different is pretty cool. So I would say get out, go to the movie theaters, go see Rosario, and support this film. Support horror movies. Support movies, but support horror movies. Okay. That is it for me. I'm Aaron Sagers. This has been Talking Strange. Until next time, be kind, stay spooky, and keep it weird.